Whoa,
live.
Okay,
And we're live. What's going on, Eli?
Wow.
You know,
What a week.
sometimes we just sitting around here before schmoozing, and sometimes we are, out there in the world doing things. I mean, not that far out there, but
there's so much to talk about.
So much has happened since last week.
Wow.
In our incredible Election Day episode. An extra thank you goes out to DJ Heather, to Phyllis Navidad, and our guests that came on the show.
Mm-hmm.
What a show it was. So much fun. We had Gary Richards, Instructo, piping in from out there. He was biking for Biden. Riding for Biden. And he was out there. Dude, he put I think he biked 60 or 80 miles that day, which is insane. I want to see the guy.
It was close to 100 miles. Biked.
Johnny Mac just telling us it's 100 miles. We all want to see Destructo's calf muscles. I think if you're watching, Gary, could you send us a picture of your calf muscles? Because I think we should see them, because that's incredible. And, thanks for riding, because, I mean, look, what an election. I mean, I don't even know what to say. This election, what?
It was stressful. It was stressful. I'm still stressed out, right? I mean,
I barely have fingernails left.
There was a day to celebrate. Saturday felt like a day to celebrate. I kind of wish I was in New York or in a city where people were out in the streets dancing and excited. All that talk about rioting and looting and all that was very much misguided, like we said last time. It's kind of crazy. All these downtowns boarding up. It was really just a celebration. And, we deserve a celebration after 4 years of stress, and especially, marginalized communities, especially, immigrants, especially Black people who have been, especially LGBTQ communities, people who have been really deeply affected by the policies of this administration, deserve a minute to just forget it all and celebrate in the streets, regardless of COVID. I saw in New York, most people were wearing masks anyway, still kind of doing that. Sometimes you just, sometimes you gotta feed your soul regardless of what else is happening, I think. And it was beautiful to see that. Biden-Harris potentially won. Looks like they won. I mean, the media's called it. The counts are in. It's almost a 50,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania. And so it looks like, potentially they won, but Trump has refused to concede yet. And, I kind of see both sides here. I think that it's fair to, go through the process and litigate and make sure all the votes are counted. And if there's actual real evidence of voter fraud, to investigate that.
Absolutely.
That's part of our democracy. But by continuing, not just Trump, but the Republican Party, like McConnell and other senators, continuing to kind of feed this narrative, and completely unsubstantiated narrative at this point of voter fraud is it's a little bit scary. I don't want to get too much into it. Try not to think about it too much, and I don't think we need to, but I think it'll be fun to maybe talk about some of these rumors that are out there and debunk them.
Do it.
Just real quick before we bring our guests in.
Debunking is a great thing.
Yeah,
let's debunk more often.
Debunk some rumors. I mean, we want to keep it fun, right? We talk about, this is Schmoozing with Soul Clap. P.S. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we're Soul Clap.
Welcome.
DJs.
Well, it's a couple of DJ dicks.
We talk about music. We talk about politics, obviously. We talk about climate change, culture, comedy, and most importantly, we schmooze.
We schmooze it up. And we're going to be joined this week by London's own Luke Solomon, founder of Classic Records, classic music company, founder of Music for Freaks, part of the group with Justin Harris, Music Freaks. He's going to be joining us, telling us what he's been up to, and sharing music, and we'll do a deep dive on some of the stuff he's done. But yeah, let's
run the intro, and then we can talk about more.
Yeah, I think so.
This is something special for you.
Schmoozing.
So that's it!
Low lacy, bamboozle. Schmoozing.
Cocorico! Talk amongst yourselves!
Schmoozing.
So
Are you ready?
The show's about to start!
Yes.
Yo.
Blitty blap blap. Bliggity
Oh,
blap.
man. Well, look, before we get into the debunk, or should we just dive into the debunk? I just want to say that we had like real threats of a serious hurricane down here in Miami, South Florida, Hurricane Eta, and we were spared. It was a tropical storm. The neighborhood, months ago, I shared some like photographs from the neighborhood of like street right down the block that was just completely flooded, and it's flooded again. Cities flooded in a lot of places, like out in the Whole Foods, and people are just driving around crazy, splashing and getting stuck. The mail lady was driving by delivering mail, and she decided to go up over the curb and go and try to like deliver so she didn't get her tootsies wet, and she got the mail truck stuck. And that was yesterday.
No.
I was out walking the dog, and I was walking with my neighbor Robert. He's got these two huge Great Danes, and we go out and walk around the neighborhood. And we saw her get stuck. We saw her spinning the wheels, so we had to take our shoes off and go like wading into the water, try to push the U.S. Post Office postal truck out of the mud. She was stuck. Yeah, craziness down here. And just when we thought that hurricane season was over, because it should be over by now, they called for another storm. This one called Hurricane Theta, which is not a hurricane. Subtropical storm Theta, which became the 29th named storm of the 2020 hurricane season, which is a record breaker since 2005. So
29th? I thought they run through the alphabet once and now they go into Greek letters, right?
Well,
Isn't
maybe
Eta,
then Theta. I don't know. I do not speak Roman numerals.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's wild. I mean, I will say that tropical storm season does last into beginning of November. Obviously, most of them hit in August, September, I think, is the peak. But it's not the first time there's been major storms in November. But
man, are we seeing
there's been a lot
of climate change down here? It's just delivering a lot of water, and there's a lot of storms. So, I mean, just the storm came and it's really devastated, Central America, and it's just heartbreaking. But we're okay. That's my report. The North Miami weather report.
Thank you.
It's raining.
Thank you.
It's wet.
So yeah, I mean, this is potentially an effect of climate change. We talked about this before on the show, because tropical storms are formed by warmer oceans. Warmer oceans lead to more and stronger tropical storms. So the warmer the ocean gets, potentially the more storms and the more severe they are. So this year has seen, warm oceans, and overall we are seeing oceans get warmer, a pattern of oceans getting warmer. I watched this. I don't even want to talk. I'll skip it for now. I mean, I watched.
You're watching the
my climate science. My climate science professor.
Oh, okay, climate science.
I'm in graduate school right now for climate science and policy because I care about this shit. He assigned us a video that is, pretty scary, and I've seen these kind of ideas, right? Like, there's two ways to kind of look at climate change. One is like super alarmist, like, hey, we're about to fall off a cliff. And the other way is to be a little less alarmist, just try to get people to change by getting interested in it, but not getting too scared, because maybe being too scared or that it's going to be too bad just leads people to be paralyzed and not actually change anything. But this video is very much science, about the science of tipping points, and how there's a number of different potential tipping points, and what global temperature rise, increases in global temperature will hit which tipping points. So like things like coral reefs, we're already hitting that with our one degree of global temperature, where I think we're at like 1.3 degrees Celsius, which is like 3 point something Fahrenheit right now. So we're already seeing coral reefs. We're already seeing melting of the Greenland ice cap. We're already seeing changes in patterns of the wind and like ocean wind patterns are starting to change. And there's a number of other tipping points, like permafrost is like, once we get to 3 or 4 degrees, we hit these tipping points where we're not going to be able to change it back. We're not going to be able to bring back the reefs. We're already at that point now where the reefs are going to be gone and they're not going to come back. And so there's a number of these other tipping points that were in danger of hitting as the temperature continues to go up. And the temperature, goes up based on how much greenhouse gases we emit into the atmosphere, and that's cumulative. So, as we continue to emit, and they stay, at least carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. So it's the stuff we're emitting now that we've emitted over the last couple hundred years is still up there.
Yeah.
And so therefore these temperatures are going to keep going up even if we stopped emitting completely right now. So that's something to think about. So it's wild, and like right now we're
talking about something like regarding from your climate studies about methods to cool the climate down.
Yeah, no, well, this is
like real fringe stuff, right?
We'll have a separate talk about
the schmooze, the cooling schmooze.
Another time, another schmooze about geoengineering. That's what that's about. Oof. I want to have my professor on here get deep.
That's going to be great. That would be a great show. Well, I mean, that's one positive though about this election and hopefully getting a jump start on rejoining the rejoining in Paris and getting down with the rest of the world about teaming up and try to make some big changes.
I mean, one big thing for me, like the current administration has made it very clear that they are opposed to any kind of action regarding climate change. They haven't fully accepted that humans cause climate change, and they've rolled back over 100 regulations in the EPA. So regarding climate, also involving other environmental protections for our water, for our air. So they've made it very clear that they are hostile to protecting the environment, protecting the planet, taking any action about the climate. So just on that, I voted for a different candidate, regardless of anything else.
Hey, I don't even spend all your time on a golf course. The water is fresh. The grass is green,
Yeah, you just pay for the water, so it's fine. But 99.9% of the earth can't afford to do that. So let's be real about this, So yeah, I mean the potential Biden-Harris administration obviously first and foremost acknowledges climate change is caused by humans and has laid a multi-trillion-dollar plan to how we're going to use renewable energy to move away from fossil fuels and also fuel job growth here in the U.S., but then also just to participate in international climate negotiations is like a huge thing. Just participating, right? Because, we have pulled out of the Paris Agreement, which is the most recent international climate treaty, which I'm learning has many problems, but at least by participating, the U.S. is symbolically kind of encouraging all other nations to be a part of it.
True.
So, regardless of our current president or how people feel about the U.S. kind of, maybe putting more energy into focusing on ourselves at home, which I don't totally disagree with. Like, it's still important that we realize that climate change is affected by us, is affected by everybody, and affects us, and affects everybody. Like, it's one of these things that you can't it's going to affect us regardless of what we decide to do here. And it's going to be affected by other countries around the world. And without some kind of dialogue about how we're going to work on this together, it's just going to be worse for everybody. So I feel like we covered enough
That was a schmooze.
serious shit. So there's BuzzFeed has a great article about debunking post-election post-election lies, I guess, post-election rumors about voter fraud and other potentially damaging falsified news. I recommend going there and looking at it before you share or believe anything you're seeing on social media. They do a great job of explaining where these rumors come from.
False.
And like CNN says Dick Cheney will be advising Biden on policy. So this was obviously CNN didn't say this. This is just someone who's not even verified on Twitter basically just wrote that. And then it got retweeted 10,000 times.
The age of information, my friend.
10,000 times. So like now all these people think that's true. So I mean,
but look at this secret computer system called Hammer. I mean, what a great name.
Actually,
Please, name it, don't hurt him.
That's actually a picture of Stalin with the mustache. So these computer systems are actually being controlled by Stalin. Right? Yeah.
Maybe Stalin was an AI.
Biden is controlled by the ghosts of communists, of dead communists. That's who control Biden, right?
Wow.
That's why he eats children, because then he can communicate with the dead ghosts of dead communists.
Oh, I thought that was because they're more tender.
The truth is, that's what the liberal media is trying to hide, right? Sorry.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, I mean,
look, if you guys are really interested in this and you disagree with Eli, I'll be posting his personal number in the chat room, and you can call him up. And
I was thinking. Look, I really do believe that. Like, look, 71 million people voted for Trump, right? And oops, sorry, I try not to say his name. Voted to keep our current president in power, and that's a lot of people. Look, I'm not discounting 71 million people. People have legitimate reasons to vote for him, and I'm not going to argue with that. Like, I think that's totally fair. So I think it could be valuable to maybe have these discussions, have people who voted for Trump on here. But like, you got to be reasonable and not believe in conspiracy theories before we can talk to you. Because once you're talking about conspiracy theories, it's just like, it's how can I even speak to you? So I'm down. I mean, I'm down to have some real conversations, because that's how we can try to move forward together. Because we're very clearly we're divided. It's still very close. A lot of people voted on both sides. Biden obviously got more than 4 million votes more.
And, honestly, it's just going to be this pissing contest going back and forth from side to side over the years until we get on the same agenda, on the same page. So,
there's shit we're not going to agree with, but let's just figure out what we can agree on.
Let's want to live on Earth. We want the environment.
But I don't know. Like, that's the thing. Like, let's figure out what we can agree on.
They want to burn it down?
I don't know. I mean, let's have these conversations.
I'm interested in speaking to someone that just wants to trash everything.
I will say that the environmental movement started when Richard Nixon was president. Not the movement, but the actual movement becoming policy in the United States started with Richard Nixon as president. Started with a Republican Senate. You know what I'm saying? Like, these policies are not liberal policies. Protecting the environment started as a bipartisan issue.
Yep.
It's only in the last 20 or so years that it's become so divisive. So I want to find out what that is. I want to find out why, how people feel about this, and like,
it's got to be money, man.
Conversations, holler. I think it's important.
The almighty dollar.
Almighty dollar, right? Look, that may be a reason. If that's your reason for voting for Trump, I want to hear about it. Let's talk about it.
Holler at us.
Be real. So moving on to the music.
Let's do it, man.
I will just one more thing. I want to shout out all the black people who basically won this election for Biden. When you look at the exit polling numbers, like, white people overall were still voted majority Trump, a little over 50%. Even looking at young people who turned out in record numbers for this election, people under 25, young white people under 25 were like 55% Biden. So went Biden, but still very close to 50%, right? Whereas black people, and especially black women across the board, came out and won Biden-Harris the election. So there was a lot of organizing done, especially post Black Lives Matter, and kind of turning that energy and that into actual political action is what it's all about. And I'm really inspired by that. And that's a beautiful thing. So big shout out to all the political organizers and grassroots folks that made this election happen.
I want to shout out too. Can I do a shout out?
Yeah, shout out.
I want to shout out everybody that watched Rave the Vote, that felt empowered by Rave the Vote, that went and registered with Rave the Vote and went out and voted and were inspired by Rave the Vote. Thank you so much for believing in our cause. And thank you everybody that worked Rave the Vote team and all the DJs, artists, everybody that put energy into that, because, when this is all said and done, we can sit back and say that, Biden-Harris is official thing, just when it's easy, that's a real accomplishment. Thank you. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Braving the vote. Braving the vote. Look, this was a record turnout by far. You know,
wait, and if you were voted Brave the Vote and you went Trump and it didn't work out, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hey, you know, record for both sides. Record.
You win some, you dim some. That's what I say.
Yeah. Hey, don't be a sore loser, though. That's all I'm saying.
All right, come on, man. Bandcamp song of the week.
Bandcamp song of the week.
The Bandcamp Song of the Week.
This one I'm fired up.
Earl Jones
I'm fired up. This song got me fired up. I'm fired up. Keeps me fired up. Let's stay fired up. I played a bunch of drum and bass on my radio show today on the lot. I'm fired up. This song, fire. Look at all that fire. This is our boy Harriet Brown from LA. And this is just dope. I just like wild shit, man. Harriet's like channels that Prince / 90s vibe in a really unique, special, contemporary way. And he's also on our upcoming album.
Whoop, whoop. Leaking it. Loving it.
All right, let's run it. Run a track.
We don't know it, we the freaks in the house. Keep your body in the moment, keep that moment locked down. Baby, won't you come inside? We can have a lot of fun. Now you're freaking in the house, baby, the freaking just begun. We get it freaking in the house tonight, ain't nowhere to go. You don't need nothing outside, it's the house come up small. We get it freaking in the house tonight, ain't nowhere to be. Just to be there, no any side, so you might as well be free. Yeah.
You know it.
We ain't gon' know it, we the freaks in the house. Keep your body in the moment, keep that moment locked down. Baby, won't you come inside? We can have a lot of fun. Now you're freaking in the house, baby, the freak just begun. We get it freaky in the house tonight, ain't nowhere to go. Don't need nothing outside, let the house go up smoke. We get it freaky in the house tonight, ain't no other place to be. Let's believe that, no any side, so you might as well be free. Yeah, free, we gonna freak it good. No, when we get freaky, we gon' freak it like we should. Somebody flip up, shut the window, look the door. If it rolls it, it's a mo. We get hot, we fit inside. We the freaks in the house, love the crate. There you brown, yes we gon' shut it down. No, we don't need no crowd, just the beat and your body, baby. Don't you ring your dials, but you know we here to party. We the freaks in the house.
Every day that passes, locked up in our houses. Every night's a weekend. You know where we eating.
We ain't going nowhere, we the freaks in the house. Your body in the moment, keep that moment locked down. Baby, won't you come inside? We can have a lot of fun. Now you freaking in the house, baby, the freak just begun. We getting freaky in the house tonight, ain't nowhere to go. Don't need nothing outside, the house go up smoke. We getting freaky in the house tonight, ain't nowhere to make be.
All right, I think
That was
Yeah.
freaky, man.
Harry Brown getting freaky.
Harry was looking like some sort of freaky Freddy Krueger in that artwork. Too.
I love how it's called the acid mix.
It's all about that acid.
So,
Ass.
It's all about the ass.
And what an appropriate segue track. Freaks in the house, because we got one of the real freaks.
We got a freak in the house.
Let's bring him in, everybody.
Freak in.
Tuning in from London, UK, Mr. Luke Solomon. Welcome to Schmoozing.
Hi, guys.
It's a very different vibration over there than here. It's like the vibration here is just like
yeah.
It's like it's 9:30. It's like I'm in bed in an hour.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. For people that might not know who you are and what your contribution is, Luke Solomon is not only a fantastic producer and DJ in his own right, but the man behind record labels such as Classic and Music for Freaks. Going back to the mid-late 90s, Classic as a collector personally is just, I am still so proud of the volume of vinyl that I have from your label. I don't even know where to begin. What's up? What up?
I was just thinking, like, it's funny, everything kind of relating to time, but that's like, 25 years is this year. Yeah,
wow.
26, yeah. So
26 years this year, you started Classic Music with Derek Carter.
Yeah, when 94, the idea was born in 94, where we were just like, we want a hot label. Because it's funny because everything was like Prescription Underground. It was all Prescription Underground. Prescription Underground is the hottest shit ever. Me and Derek were like, we just want to make a record label that's like better than Prescription Underground, which is like we were kids, like full of bravado and jumped up and stuff. And actually, initially, it was actually Derek, Shay, and me that started Classic together.
Oh wow,
Shay Damier.
Yeah, cool.
And within about this is how underground Shay is. Like he's the most underground person of all of the producers and the friends that I've made over the years. Have been fortunate enough to make, and like Shay is always like the one that you never really knew. The mystery was always like, what's he up to? Where's he been? Someone just saw him, like one of those things, like, oh, he was here 5 minutes ago and that kind of stuff. And yeah, always like an enigma. But we got a write-up, like before we got all this hype on the label before we'd even started or put a record out. We even did a tour before we put a record out, like me and Derek on the road and stuff. So it was like this hype machine. And we got like a write-up in Music Magazine, which was like around during that time. And we got a phone call from Shay. I can't remember if he phoned me or Derek, was like, yeah, guys, I'm not really sure this is the direction where I want to go. It's all like a little commercial and overground for me, like just based on the publicity. He was like, I'm out. Yeah, and it was like, that was it. It was just me and Derek, before we'd even put a record out.
He felt like, this could be a winning combination with these guys. I'm out of here. I love that concept, Luke, that of like, okay, we got an underground artist, underground musician, but the concept of an underground friend is just fucking awesome.
Yeah, I've got some like pretty underground friends.
He really sums it up.
Surround myself with them, but
I can't get this guy on the phone. This guy's too underground for me.
exactly.
He was supposed to have lunch. He didn't show up.
That's exactly what it was. It was like these enigmas, like people that you're just like, we heard he was here a week ago. But yeah, it was like that. There was this, like, that whole period. Like, I think because I turned 50 this year, and the nostalgia hits you hard, like really hard as you get older. Like suddenly you have these waves like come over you, and you feel like the emotion is kind of amazing because you feel like it's the longing to be young, but at the same time the experience of having been through it. And I talked to Derek about it, and these moments of like when we were kids and stuff like that, and you just have these moments where you just remember periods of time quite like really clearly. And that period of time, Derek was living at my house. Like we were doing Bar Umber on Wednesday. It was me and Kenny Hawks. And like people would just roll through and stay. So like Gemini, Spencer Kinsey would be on my couch, or Ron Trent would be on my couch, or like, and it was just like that. Like every week it would be someone new, some mad story, some crazy shit happened. Derek fell down some stairs. Derek fell up some stairs, like that kind of shit. Yeah. And it was always like that. So we just, this like chaos. It was absolute chaos.
How did you become such a Chicago liaison?
So just before all of that, like I got a job at Freetown. I worked at Freetown Records, which was set up by this legendary Japanese guy called Sankey Yo, and he was another one of those like enigmas in my life. No one really knew the whole story. He came from money, but he came from like Japanese money, like a family that were royalty or some crazy shit. And he was like the black sheep. He would just like, he left to basically track down Shaka Khan because he was obsessed with her. So he would go to New York, and he moved to the UK, and he set up a record label because he wanted to impress her. And he'd go out to New York and he'd try and track it down. He put records out by Taka Boom, like Shaka's sister. And everything was about her. Like it was really in a really sweet way, like because they connect. Like actually, Shaka put out an album Sankey died in I want to say like 2000, somewhere around there. But Shaka put out an album around that time, and like that whole album was dedicated to Sankey. And I read the liner notes just randomly, and I was just like, oh my god, like this. Even now, it's like goosebumps. Like,
wow, was that before or after he passed?
Well, it was after he died. Like she dedicated it to him after he died. Like he died with John Robinson from Robinson Wall Project, who was part of Mental Instrument, and they died in a car crash together, like on the way back from Leeds. Like, and it was a pretty sad. But Sankey lived that life. Like he was, it was like he'd go away. I worked with a guy called Steve Canueta who went on to work at Ministry, and we would like Raiders draw. Like you always knew that there was some shit left behind. Like you pull the sleeves out and there'll be just mountains of shit lying around, and like you'd just be like, Sankey's away, like all these crazy things, It just like insane stories. So he was this. So the short part of that is that during that time, Sankey set up a label called Subwoofer. And Subwoofer, we put out a record by Master Jefferson. I think that was the first release. And the second release was Pop, Dip, and Spin by Ron Trent.
Yep.
And I was working as PR, like mail out guy. So I just had all these phone numbers. So I would just be like phoning up people. I phoned Ron Trent. I got Ron Trent's number off the subscription record, went through to the Casual office, Casual and Relief, as a whole other story, became really good friends with Rob Kachukas and Ivan, who works at Rockstar Games and stuff now, who set up Guidance. I became really close with them, and they were my kind of link to Ron. Then I became friends with Ron, and then during all that time, I'd started going in the studio with Rob Mello and Century Productions and Zachy D. And Rob was kind of teaching me studio production, and we were obsessed with Prescription Underground, and we wanted to put a record on Prescription Underground, and so which we ended up doing at Prescription every night and as Heaven and Earth. And through all of that, the dots started joining, and I'd pick up the phone. I'd phone Derek. I had Derek's number off of a record, and we just talked kind of randomly. And then I went out to Chicago on a business trip with Freetown and stayed with Rob Kachukas from Casual. And then I got booked to play at some. I was so out of my depth. I got booked to play at this party with Morris Joshua. There was like Roy Davis, like everyone was on this bill, and there was me, like the English white dude, like just like totally out of his depth. And we played this party, and Derek kind of turned up because he knew the party was kind of a little dead, and he wanted to come and like rescue me and show me a good time. And so and then we went on to see Sneak at a party, and I got hammered and fell asleep in the toilet, and Derek kind of rescued me, and that was the beginning of our friendship. Was like, oh shit, we're going to cause some trouble, and that was all we wanted to do.
You know,
even with the record label, you know, it was just cause trouble.
It's really interesting. Like, whoa, are you guys hearing my?
I hear an echo as well.
Echo, huh? Is it better now? Is it still messed up?
Oops. I got echo cancellation on.
Yeah, I have mine on too. I just turned it off.
Goes.
Sounds better. Okay. You know, we had a conversation with Damian Lazarus a couple months ago, and like there's really this infrastructure in the UK, like around dance music, that allowed for these connections to happen. And it was in the 90s. I mean, that I feel like in the US it was at that time was maybe very corporate, and like it was all the major labels that were making a lot of the records. And I don't think that there was as much of a generation around it in the US. Like it was kind of the producers that were already out putting out music in the 90s that are still in the industry now. Whereas there's kind of like this gap of guys, I think your age, Luke, in the US in a way. It's weird what happened.
Yeah. I mean, you mean like the bridges that were being built between?
Yeah. I mean, like the bridges built in the UK because of like this infrastructure of dance music that was accessible, I think, in a way to a lot more folks because of the underground.
I think as well, like actually, like I think a lot of it's to do with like our obsessive nature, like the cultural aspect of the UK is like of being like historically like music fans, like massive music fans. I'm not saying that's, but in a really almost kind of stalkerish way. Like it's like that you want to get. It was, you know, you take it back to like the Northern Soul boys that were kind of like they got these 7-inch. They wanted to know where they came from. They went on these like massive like trips going out to find where these records came from, and it was this absolute kind of dedication to obsessive like behavior, like trying to collect things and want to know the history of things. And I'm not to say that doesn't exist in America, but it's kind of historically, it's a weird thing that's always happened. And I think I fell into that category of like, I just wanted to know the people that made these records. It's just obsessed with it. You know, it was intriguing to me. Like everything about it was just like, what is this? The first prescription record, I remember like someone bringing it. I was working in a record store, and I know Casual and Relief had been around, and I was collecting them, and the sound kind of resonated with me. You know, I was hearing these things, but there was something about this, having kind of grown up through the 80s and listening in rave culture in the UK and dancing in fields. But there was just something that happened when the first prescription records came that I was just like I need to know everything about what the fuck this is. Like, what is that noise? Like what the fuck was that? Like no one, you it came out of nowhere. You had Strictly Rhythm, you had all these things going on, but you had this instrumental record with a big sound, and then another record which had the same big sound in it. And I was just like, I need to figure out what the fuck this is and who.
So was the answer to that question Ron Trent?
Shay Damier and Ron Trent.
Yeah.
Ron.
Just everything. Do you know what I mean? That was, and then meeting Ron, and then getting to know Ron, and then understanding that he was fucking 15 when he made Altered States. I was just like, what the fuck? This is insane, you know. And so and then when I met Derek, obviously, but then Gemini, Spencer Kinsey, like me and Spencer. I mean, it's a very sad story attached to all of that, but Spencer and me were very, very close. And that was the point where I saw a DJ. I mean, I'd seen Derek. I'd been in those places where Derek had played and just turned my world upside down. But I'd seen Spencer, Gemini, just literally, my head just melted. I was like, what? he's playing Terence Trent D'Arby with some other acid shit and some shit at the time, like laughing manically, and like my head was just messed up. And I used to do mix cassettes. He'd come and stay at my house, and he would like stay up all night, listen to my cassettes, and then come down in the morning and then just give me like advice and like pointers, you know, and like proper, he properly like taught me.
Yeah.
You know.
Constructive criticism.
And I was just like, I'm a young kid, and this is insane. This was school for me. You know,
it's maybe another one of these situations where like the lines between art, creativity, and genius and madness are all sort of blurred together.
Well, I mean, that's, Spencer sadly is the greatest example of that in my experiences. Because I lived through this whole period. Manic schizophrenic. I don't know what the diagnoses were, but we saw like elements of it happening over the years, and then it became more intense and more crazy. And then, the stories are he's in LA, he's in a home. I've had a couple of email exchanges, but I don't really know whether he chose to opt out from society because he felt he was being watched, and there was all kinds of stuff going on. But this is the guy that made Swimming with Sharks. I played me Swimming when he came out the studio from making Swimming with Sharks, and voices in my head, like all the messages were in the songs, and getting the songs and listening to them, and you just knew that this wasn't going to end well.
Let's play. Do we have any Gemini tracks pulled up for the show, or should we pull something? I feel like we should play something.
I mean, you should play Swimming with Sharks because I can tell you the story behind it. Would be kind of cool. I mean, I don't want to, without naming too many names, but there's a couple of records like that which are interesting, with almost like that kind of hip hop sentiment where people were writing songs about people in the, there were battles and shit going on. There's a lot of that going on during that period in time.
But I got this. I'll send the link over.
Oh, you got it? I just pulled it.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, there you go. It's quick.
Yeah, we already got it. Chris, shout out to Chris, our producer.
That was quick. Shout out to Chris.
All right, while we listen to Luke, there was a funny thing from the chat room that somebody said, "How is this live? I saw Luke Solomon wearing that shirt the other day." I don't believe that this show is live.
Especially if the show is live or not. LOL.
And I assure you that we are live. It is now 4:42 p.m. Eastern.
The funniest thing about that was I wore this as Yellow Magic Orchestra t-shirt, and I wore it for my Beatport live stream, and I put it on tonight, and I was like, I wonder if anyone's going to notice that I wore this on my live stream. But sure enough, I
don't know if you ever get that with your fashion, but if you play a big enough gig,
annoyed at myself.
Or you do a photo shoot in something fly, and then you're like, I can't wear that.
I'll never wear it again. Never again. I have archives of stuff like that. I'm like, I can never wear that again.
I do too. It's tough, man. Especially as you have a family and you can't spend as much money on clothes, and you're like, well, I just can't buy all that fresh shit. Can't be fresh all the time anymore. I got other financial priorities. Shit.
No. I'm sorry. I'm actually really annoyed at myself for wearing this t-shirt.
No, you're a fan of YMO, man.
I'm a huge fan of YMO.
There's no shame in that game.
Yeah.
Let's turn up this Gemini for a minute.
Yeah. Because you can't maybe rewind it a little bit so you can just hear the lyrics on the beginning.
Okay, so now your insecurities led you to fuck with me, try and hold me down, baby. Haven't you heard I'm free? Look at you standing there working like a politician, yet on another mission, screaming peace on the side of the beast. Both women round me sharp. Keep your eyes out on your heart. Both women round me sharp. Keep your eyes out on your heart. But now, instead of trying to understand me, you look me in my eyes and try to underhand me. And I see, like Reagan, all of a sudden you can't remember respect. All right, man. Camera's ready. Better get ready.
So, I mean, there's a clue in that lyric there about who that's about. I don't really want to say, but what it says here is the perfect example of pre-social media, when people were pissed off and needed to say something, and rather than just go online and type it in, they actually went in the studio and made a fucking record about it. And that for me is everything. Do you know what I mean? That is like go and do something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's also not just like you're making something productive out of your frustration, one, but also you're not going to do it unless it's a really real issue, right? You're not just like, oh man, he pissed me off, I'm going to write a whole. No, someone has to really do you wrong. You go to the studio and spend that energy writing a track. It's not just like going on social media and being like, this person said something. No, there's like a deep cut in there, you know, for
and you know what? Like, there was a lot of, like, especially between classic and music for freaks, like we had quite a few of those records, like people writing songs about other people in the industry and shit going on, like, and like I've done it. Do you know what I mean? I still do. Do you know what I mean? I still write about shit that pisses me off, because that's that thing with being an artist. Do you know what I mean? Like a real artist, like actually genuinely like feeling that you needed to say something, even if that sentiment doesn't hold up, or things changed and friendships got remade and stuff got mended. Like, it still has this kind of like thing left in history that I can talk about with you guys. You know, it's like, I remember him coming, putting the DAT in the DAT machine, playing to that. He'd never played it to anyone, played it to me for the first time.
Is it Green Velvet? Because he's saying he quoted the camera's ready. He quoted the camera's ready line, right?
So as far as I'm like, everything got kind of resolved, but during that time, like it was an issue, and it was. but Spencer did that. Spencer made a record about Derek, and Derek made a record remix Spencer's record and put a message in it back to Spencer. Like, it was that kind of shit.
Oh,
like,
old school house music beef, man. I love this.
Yeah,
we had a Terry Hunter on the show who was talking about some beef with Todd Terry, and Terry Hunter had beef at the whatever the music conference was they used to have in New York City.
Okay,
Terry came from Chicago, and yeah, Terry Hunter
when he was meeting Kenny.
What's up?
I thought that was when he was meeting Kenny Dope for the first time.
But like Terry Hunter was like, "Oh, you're that N-word from Chicago." Came up to him in the club and started, was like, you know, so, and Terry thought it was like, you know, he was like dissing him. He was coming at him, and then so they like almost fought. But he ended up just wanting to like give him props and the whole thing, and he was. And like then they had an encounter at the hotel the next day of the conference, and like Kenny Dope was involved in that as well. So it was wild. It was wild.
But you know what though? It's funny, isn't it? Because you look at all these things, like you listen to a record like that now, like everything, or whatever that was about now, whatever that is, has become in history. Those are like kind of testament to like personalities that make not like pure artists, like artists that create and have a vision of what they want to do, and all, you know, everything we try, like that's freaks tried to make that those, you could hear it, you know, like I was listening down, we were just trying to rip off like Gemini records, we were trying to rip off records, we were trying to, but we were not nailing it. It just ended up being our own version of whatever that was. But I still like listen in awe, you know. It's like those things are just like, wow, you know, that's coming from a real place. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I do want to hear what the story, the origin story of Freaks and Music for Freaks, but just when you were talking about message in the music, it reminded me of so many conversations that we've been having on the show, off the show, about this past year, and like all the stuff that's been going on with politics, with civil rights, and all the opinions and the feelings and the emotions, and DJs posting their opinions on social media, and the backlash being from the fans. Oh, this. Let's keep your opinions and your politics out of the music. And this is just another example where, this is very personal and very specific, but, the message, that's the origin of the creation of the music, When you're going into the studio with, you got a chip on your shoulder, it might be like, oh man, Eli pissed me off, I'm gonna write a record about it. But maybe it's gonna be like, the world is pissing me off, I'm gonna make a record about it. My city's pissing, you know what I mean? All these other elements. So once again, we find that there is a real true relationship between these feelings and music. Oh, hi, Drea. This is Drea's cameo appearance on Schmoozing with Soul Clap.
Hi.
She like came in the basement door and then walked through.
She's making a cameo, like Luke Solomon.
Probably hiding from our daughter, because if our daughter sees one of us, she just like immediately wants to hang out.
So just to from what you were saying, Charlie, that's what it should like. Like every Freaks record we ever made was literally about like there's stories. Do you know what I mean? It's about something. That's where it comes from. Maybe a day, an experience going to the shops and buying some chicken, or or picking up the phone and have your mum annoy you, or some shit, or someone, or darker than that, someone losing someone, or all those things, or being annoyed at the world. And like everything that we did, like all the Freaks records, we never fit. Like everything we did, we didn't fit in. Do you know what I mean? We felt like we didn't fit in. We felt like we weren't part of the industry. We felt like we didn't. And we had something to say about that. So everything that we did was all literally about what we felt our place was in. Well, I don't know if we had chips on our shoulder. We weren't really angry. We just felt like it was something, on The Man Who Lived Underground, there's a record called He's Angry. We had all these different things that were about shit that we were going through, and
look, like artists, musicians are humans who go through things, and when there's like crazy shit happening in the world, and like there's things that need to be protested or brought to the attention or talked about or investigated or thought about or just dealt with on an emotional level, musicians deal with it by writing music. That's just how it is. So to say, keep politics out of music is just...
No.
I think that we bring that up almost every week, because we got to fight that with everything we have. That's not okay to say that.
Look, when we're all together on a safe, non-pandemic dance floor again, and we're celebrating together, and we're close, and we're feeling motivated, and then that may be joyous, but someone puts a record on with a message, that can inspire people to go out and make the world a better place. So
I do, look, come on, you look at records like Promised Land, like that record. Yeah. Like, come on, like anyone that has anything to say about dance music and how we should separate the message from the music, all you have to do is...
But this is also part of it. I would argue that it's racist in a way. It's like racist and discriminatory to say keep the message out of the music. This house music that we love and that is like is the basis for everything we do was built off of... It's a protest music. It's like a music about oppression. It's a music about coming together, like made by marginalized people, made by Black people, made by LGBTQ people, made by Latin people who are oppressed. So like to say keep that out of our music is to me is trying to hide or ignore the past and who created this past that we're on.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly.
I mean, like I remember we've had these conversations. Like, I guess we get to usually see each other at ADE every year and have a nice deep conversation about everything.
We have our annual summit.
This year we have to do it virtually, which sucks. But we can still do it. And I know, like the last 2 years, last couple years, that we always have been talking about this feeling like there's a new energy of younger Black artists, younger Black people involved in the industry, and also LGBTQ and women has been a breath of fresh air, because often the music has gotten very stale, and so we need this re-involvement of the people who, the groups that originally kind of gave the music so much excitement, I think. Go ahead.
No, I'd be bold enough to say, and probably hated for it as well, that actually everything that's happened this year in some respects is given the music industry, the dance music industry, a kind of massive wake-up call, and it's like, okay, we were coasting on corporate money and capitalism that has surrounded the dance music industry for quite a long time now. Insane amounts of money that are being earned and spent and changed, passed between hands, and it had become normal. Do you know what I mean? It had become normal to, so-and-so, an underground DJ is what, £1 million this year? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, someone else earned £2 million. It's like, how, and that's normalized, it's like, wait, what the, I remember £350 for a gig was like, that's a lot of money. 600 quid for a gig, that's a lot of money. £1,000, that's £2,000 to play records. What? And then all of a sudden, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, and you're just like, when is this going to end? And it got shut down so quickly. And I think that the time in the period that it's happened, the shock is almost to a point where it's like, actually, let's sit and like just think about this for a minute. Let's like think about what has happened and what has been going on, and like, how do you figure out how to get out the other side of it? Do we need that much money? Do we need to exist in that way? Do we need to be flying on 8 flights a week? Do we need to, thinking about climate things that we talk about a lot, all of these things, and you realize that, even me included, DJing in clubs where predominantly white faces, predominantly gentrified, having grown up around black kids, Latinos, making music and all those things. And I look at it and I'm going, holy shit, like I just didn't stop for a minute to just go, like, I'm part of this problem as well. Do you know what I mean? And that's been a lot of time. I mean, you can imagine I've had 8 months to sit and think and be creative and do all those things, but it really makes you like reflect. I don't wish anything on any of my peers and friends who have lost their jobs or may not be coming back to this industry or may not be having a nightclub or any of those things. It's horrific, that the decimation, but at the same time that it's a shot in the arm. It's like, okay, we really need to, like, why are we in this? Do you know what I mean? What are we doing? Like, are we in this? Do I need to go and get another job? Do I need to go and work in a bank? Do I need to go and be a gardener? Do I need, or what else? But I've been here before. Do you know what I mean? I've seen this. I've lost gig. I've not been top of the list anymore. So I understand what it's like to hustle and come back. And then it shows you the conversations I have with people that are real hustlers, like you guys, or people like Felix the House Cat, or people that have been around for a long time, like Mike Dunn and people like that, or younger generations who have got nothing to lose. Like, it's almost like, come on, like, now's the time, like, because when this all comes back around again, it's going to be about how it started out, I guess, I
mean, yeah, and I think it's part of it is also a responsibility for us, one, to address it and think about what we can do to make it better. We've tried to use this program as a forum for, I guess, mostly Black American artists to kind of talk about their experiences and what they see as needing to happen. And like, so I think this is a unique time, both for sustainability stuff and the climate, like how we can rebuild as an industry around that, then also like equity stuff. Like, I feel like it's important, one, acknowledging, like, I think our white privilege had something to do with us being able to get through multiple waves here, right? Like, not only did we make it once, but we've been able to, survive in the industry, which is super hard. And, I think being white in the industry and having a system that's built to support us, and also, maybe having more of an economic support. Like, me and Charlie have Jewish parents that have at different times helped support us get through stuff when times were harder. And like,
True.
So acknowledging that, and then thinking about how we can really like try to empower and provide this framework for people of color and for LGBTQ and women in the industry and really like level that playing field. I mean, maybe it requires us giving up something, you know, as
no, we do. I mean, I've had that very conversation. Luke Howard from Horsebit Disco is a really close friend of mine, and we talk about these things a lot. And that very thing that you said, it's like, okay, so maybe I don't get to go back and DJ like I used to before, but like at least there's a space there for someone that needs it more than I do. You know, I can make music. I've built the things that I've built in order to survive, my kids to survive and have food on the table and all of those things. There's an infrastructure in place, and that if I could be part of helping rebuild or build a new infrastructure that will allow and help people that have not had the privilege that I've had or the life that I've had in different way to be able to exist, then that's what should happen, you know, that without an absolute shadow of a doubt.
Kishtina, what's up? Shouting you out.
Heather,
Heather, what's up? Luke, why did you preface by saying that, you know, you might get hated for saying this stuff? Because these are deeply introspective and righteous thoughts to be having, and a sign of your compassion and empathy.
Can I obviously this question's for Luke, but I would just preface it and say, like, I think that admitting privilege is really, really hard. And a lot of people would rather lash out and be upset rather than acknowledge their privilege. That's, I think, something we're dealing with on a deep level here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, like maybe I just didn't want it to come across as that I'm glad that this pandemic happened. That's what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like, I'm not glad. Actually, that's actually a lie. Like, I'm not. I find the fact that my kids, who have had a different life to the life that I've had, who have not really had to worry in the way that I did growing up, being around, not having, you know, come from money and those and various different pivotal parts in my life, for them to experience something that is that humbling and that grounding is I'm kind of glad that it in a way is that it's happened, because we've had the time to sit around a table and talk, you know, while they sit around and eat the food they want to eat and moan about the fact that it's not the right pizza and shit like that. But the reality of it is like, guys, you know, this is not, I know I've worked hard and my wife Chris has worked hard and done all those things, but I do feel like if you come out the other side of this, for whatever way, when you're faced with anything in your life, if you manage to win and come out the other side, it only makes you stronger, right? You know, and so I just hope, all I know that it's made my kids see life very differently, and they can't take things for granted. So I'd like to think that will happen for a lot of people. And maybe when you're in the thick of it, if you're in the thick of it and you can't see more than 3 feet in front of you, that it's a very different prospect. When you've got no money and you've had money and all of those things, it's very easy to sit and say, okay, shit, you know, like it'll all be okay. But having spoken from experience of things not being okay, and I'm not just talking about money and having a job, I'm talking about a lot of different things that have happened in my life, that shit goes on. Like, things have a way of figuring out what they become, like whether it's good or bad. So it's kind of that. I mean, we're getting very deep here, but I guess
okay, Schmoozing.
Yeah. So my point is that I'm kind of glad. I don't know, glad's not the word, but you know
what? I'll join you on that, because I'm not happy about people getting sick. I'm not happy about people dying, losing jobs, this, that, not being able to do this, and kids that can't do this, and parents that are, you know, there's all types of terrible, terrible, terrible side effects of this pandemic. But the wake-up call, the chance for people to dig back in and develop themselves personally, the chance for us touring musicians to take a break, pump the brakes, be at home, develop our, you know what I mean? Get like, you know, there are some positives. So You know?
Yeah,
I think it's like we can take it as like, look, personally, right? Like there's a lot of downsides for our society, for our industry. It's a real reckoning, and it's the first time, you know, and I think in any of our lives, right, that we're dealing with a global catastrophe on this level of this loss of life, this effect on every part of our lives. Like, you know, it hasn't been like this since wars, right?
Since wars,
so like this is massive that we're all affected by this. And I think, you know, I agree with you guys on a personal level. I'm very thankful to have reflection time, which I think we just didn't have. And even as I know, as thoughtful people, you know, who did take time for what time we could for reflection and trying to grow, like it still wasn't really possible before. You know, you're just always working towards something. Yeah. And it would have been great things that you love and you enjoy and are enriching your life and are helping you grow as a person or helping the world around you. But you're still don't have that true reflection time if you're, you know, deep in this work of your career.
Yeah. I mean, which consume. I mean, I'm guilty of letting. I mean, you know, in all honesty, since we've been doing what we've been doing since March, I haven't stopped working, but I did go from non-stop work to kind of August have a little bit of a meltdown because it kind of consumed me, to then try and readdress and find a whole new balance, you know, of like, okay, I need to step away from things a little bit, and started walking a lot. And I've, you know, practiced yoga. I've been practicing yoga for a long time, so it keeps my brain intact, and which has a habit of going haywire every now and again. So, you know, it's I guess it's been valuable for lots of reasons. But we were saying yesterday about those things, like coming back to DJ with like all these new skills that we can have, like DJing with your leg behind your head and shit like that. Like, you know,
in the studio, Eli just like honing their craft. DJs that come out and work the crossfader with my nose.
Watch
like
this,
you know?
DJs.
I suppose if you're a monk, then this is just like, you know, another day of the office.
Another day of the office.
Yeah.
Monk's like, yeah, it's been sitting.
But I mean, you know, honestly, like another big revelation I had was just walking away from social media, because it was kind of getting the better of me, and I've gone back to reading books again, which I stopped doing, and I was just like, what? Like, I've just been sitting on my phone in bed rather than reading books, and now I'm reading books that I hadn't got round, that I bought, and you know, just being kind of just not being preoccupied with shit that just doesn't, people I don't know and things that I don't care about, and that's been a bit of a revelation, you know.
For sure. I wonder how, if that will resume when presumably we're kind of going back to traveling all over the place, or if this is just going to be that big shift, you know. Wow, it didn't happen in 2012, but my goodness, 2020. You know.
Well, you know, vaccine hopes. So who knows what happens next year? It could be a whole different set of rules. I like to feel like I bring things that I've learned from this year back in, you know, I don't want to just get back on that treadmill again, or if I do, it has to be in a very different way, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we have a responsibility now that we've learned this stuff to take it back in. And, you know, I do want to kind of continue talking about this kind of equity in the music industry thing, and just like what we can do. That's, you know, I always think that the most important thing is to try to figure out action, right? What kind of action can we take? What kind of action can we inspire other people to take to make things better, not just talk about problems, right? So I think like we've had discussions about some things on the show, but I'd love to hear kind of your ideas, what you're working on, and then we can go into some more stuff.
So are we talking in relation to just,
I mean, empowering artists to empowering Black and, you know, other you know, marginalized artists also. Yeah, I mean, just to release music, but also I think something that's come up is like really having more people of color in the industry, more women in leadership roles in the industry, like these kind of things. How do we facilitate this kind of stuff happen?
So, I mean, again, like, it's interesting. Again, me and Charlie were talking yesterday, and I don't like being inclusive in what I do every day has always been kind of part of my life. You know, it's like I I didn't just suddenly go this year, oh shit, I need to do something about things. Like the reality of that is that it's my life. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's everything. It's a really difficult thing to talk. I don't want to turn into that whole, I've got black friends, or I've got, queer friends, or I've got transsexual friends, or I've got, those things. I don't want to turn it into a pissing contest of sorts of like, oh, well, I do this anyway, and I do that anyway, and I don't need to do anymore. And you can always do more. You can always change more. You can always help be the change, make the change, and all of those things. So in regards to that, whether, the answer is yeah. Like, obviously, there's always more to do. I mean, if we're talking in relation to the record label and within the industry, making sure, I think the biggest problem I have, in all honesty, is probably not so much the involvement with people representation of artists of color or queer artists or
this is a good, not to cut you off, but I feel like just to kind of dig into this, like connecting what you said to what you're saying about the label, like you had, like, classic music was founded by you and two black guys from Chicago first, but like also has always represented music, and even currently in many ways like represents music from these groups in a really powerful way. So maybe the better question is, how have you done it? How have you managed to do that with classic? Like, how, like,
it's not conscious. Do you know what I mean? It's not, I'm not suddenly going, shit, I need more black people on the label. Like, it's like, it's my life. Do you know what I mean? Those are my friends. Those are the people I surround myself with. Those are the people that I talk to every day. These are, Honey Dijon is 25 years we've known each other. I've stuck with her for every single part of the way to understand what she goes through on a daily basis, to have as a black trans woman, to really realize and live it, to know that it's not fucking easy, and it's like, okay, so, she sits around the table with me and the kids ask questions and they talk and we have those conversations, and that's the change. It's like my kids need to know that they're in a position where they get to experience this stuff, not like a lot of their friends do in any way whatsoever. And they realize the importance of that. Do you know what I mean? And that for me is where the change is going to come. It's like, okay, like, that you or people of your age, and my oldest son being 16, it's like, okay, like, what is it going to encourage his friends, where he's got black friends or queer friends or whatever part of society that they're in, like, what opportunities they're going to have within creative industry. And my wife works in TV, and it's a very similar situation for her. It's like, I think, but TV has made changes a lot quicker, and there have been changes in place a lot longer than there have been in the music industry, as in inclusivity is in this country by law. Do you know what I mean? You have to do things that employ certain people, be seen to employing certain people from different walks of society, different cultures, different nationalities, different genders, different sexualities, all those things. That has to happen, and that's something that the music industry always has kind of lacked on. Like, it's still like the Wild West. Do you know what I mean? It's still renegade. This is like two questions. So one, is that generally accepted? Like, we call that in the US, we call that affirmative action, right? Where there's requirements to hire certain groups. Yeah. And there's it's very split here if people believe in that or not. In the UK, is that something that generally is accepted, or is that something that's... It's not really talked about, to be honest, because within TV, I mean, I'm not bedded in TV, so I don't, but I listen to a lot of my wife's conversations, and I'm very aware that
I hope so. Otherwise, you're in the doghouse.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. But the thing is that no, I don't. You get those conversations where you talk to older people and it's like, oh yeah, we've got to make sure that there's, this, what was this, what's the something we were talking about? There's a film called, is it David Copperfield? I can't remember what it is, but it's got it's race blindness in it. I think it's called race blindness, but it's basically you cast characters that, regardless of the history, it's a historical story. Regardless of their race, they're put in the roles. So it could be a black family with white kids, or so it's not relevant. It's part of the story. And one of the conversations that came up recently was that the fact that they were working on an actual factual documentary, a historical documentary, and the documentary needed to be filmed according to the facts. And the conversation that came up was, is it okay to have, even though this is a white person, historically in the history books, this white person was the person that played that role. Should we just have a black person play that role? How does that work? And there's a big debate over it. Well, if we implement race blindness, it shouldn't matter. They're just being the person, so it doesn't matter. And there's a big push in that direction at the moment. It's like you could have Oliver Twist and it could be made up of all races, colors, genders, regardless of what it is. That's the story. And I guess that those are big conversations that have been having. And there is like, oh, that's too much. You're thinking too far. You're being too woke. You're being too, all these things. I see snippets of those conversations coming up and people going, it's too extreme. But the reality of it for me is like we're normalizing things that we have taken for granted as being what it is. It's just because this is a story about this amount. It doesn't, just sidetracking slightly. My son is disabled. He has cerebral palsy. And one of the conversations that we have, and a lot of the time about it, is representation of disabled people in film and cinema. And even if we talk about in music and in the music industry, I don't know a single physically disabled person that I've ever come across in the music industry, like it working behind the scenes, that I'm aware of. Mentally, maybe, but physically, I struggle.
There's plenty of mentally disabled people in our industry.
What about
not to be?
Yeah. Well, Paul Johnson.
Sorry if that's a bad joke, but I'm sorry. I'm sure I'll get a thrashing for it. But,
I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But when we start to talk about films and cinema and all of those things, I mean, the divide is huge unless the story is about a person being disabled. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, Breaking Bad is a great example of that not being an issue. Like the kid had cerebral palsy and it wasn't a topic. It was groundbreaking. Do you know what I mean? Those are things. So those are things that you start to implement into the workplace or promote in the workplace, but at the very core, the roots of it, the roots are broken, like the roots are gone. Do you know what I mean? There aren't those facilities and things in place. There are very few things in place that encourage people of color, encourage women to go and work in the industry or give them jobs that are further up the ladder, that allow them to be in places of power. And those things are few and far between. And so you have to start at the beginning, right? So you have to go, right, well, what's going on in the schools? Why isn't that happening? How do we get the schools to encourage these situations? How do you then push these kids through and give them the options and the possibilities to have these jobs? And so
but you don't often, sorry to cut you off, but you don't often, like the music industry or like the arts, that's not exactly necessarily correlated to education in school systems.
Oh no, it definitely is. I mean, having
no, I'm just
like
saying
art
like,
programs, having music programs in schools is a big part of it, but then also how you're engaging kids in those programs is another big part of it.
I guess when I think about it, it's like, a lot of musicians or artists say, oh, school isn't for me. I'm going to follow my passion into music, into art, dropouts. I'm not that case. You're not that case.
Wait, but often there's that initial moment where they have a music teacher in school who inspires them, or they're able to get access to an instrument via their school.
Our show with Scream a couple weeks ago, and he, how he found his education in a record store, and.
But we're talking about artists here, right? I'm talking about people that A&R. Like I'm talking about people that work within the industry, that not so much the creatives. I think creatives kind of find their paths one way or another, regardless of the system. I mean, whether they're allowed to establish themselves because the system's broken is a very different thing. I think people that are working, like the workers, I mean,
But aren't these people, these workers are often people who love music, maybe considered being artists, but ended up finding a different path, but like found a way to work with music, right? Often. So it's like, how do you kind of sell this, or how do you like instill this idea that like, if you love music, if you feel like you're an artist, if you want to participate in music, you don't have to have a hit record or like do this and this. Like you can go work in the industry is also a way that you can be a big part of it and support it. And men are finding this, but women are not. And like, you know, why is that?
Well, that's the thing where I mean, the answer to that, I don't know. Like, it is like what, I mean, it definitely feels like things are changing. Like, it does feel like I'm noticing that there are the opportunities are being created for more women, POC, Black people. Like, there's definitely stuff going on that I'm seeing which I wasn't seeing. But I think it all goes back to the fact that we've allowed dance music, and specifically dance music I'm talking about, we've allowed it to become gentrified and to such an extreme that it almost feels kind of unreachable or unobtainable. And that goes back to the roots of, you know, surrounding yourself around where are all the Latino producers, where are all the Black producers that we used to have, like when we were talking back into the 90s, and especially in the States, and more so than the UK, I'd say. Like what happened there? Like, where did that change? Was that a cultural shift? Was that the fact that musical taste has changed and it's just diverted? Is it the fact that everything is very specific and allocated to genres now? Or, you know, regardless of all of that, there's still an industry that needs to exist. And how many POC, Black, queer, or how many people within the industry are working from the bottom and working their way up, whether they're an artist or not an artist, or whether they want to aspire to be the greatest A&R or the greatest record company CEO, or the, you know, it's those are the things that I look at. The questions are just those. A lot of those questions come up. It's like, we got to this place and it kind of just happened without us really paying enough attention. And I'm responsible for that, along with a lot of other people, and, you know, just generally within the music industry. And this comes to the point where we need to address it and things need to change.
I just want to send a quick shout out while we're here to She Said So, which is a great organization involving women and gender minorities in the music industry. They're doing great work. They have a series of conversations on their Instagram channel I participated in, and just also just empowerment and other industry initiatives. So this is really, I think, you know, important.
Mentoring that's a big thing. You know, it's you know, as you guys know, but I don't know if everybody knows that, you know, I work with as well as classic, I work alongside Glitterbox and Defected, and we are part of we've built bridges with South Africa for mentoring, and basically trying to bring Black kids up through the music industry. And that's a major part of mentoring and trying to kind of help fast track kids into an industry that they may not have access to, that are coming from places where they wouldn't have those opportunities, you know. So that's a step in the right direction. You know, that's the things that these bridges that we need to build, more of those need to be built, and things need to, you know, the help, the mentoring is a big factor.
You sent Luke yesterday the website, and I'm just popping in the chat. Chris, if we could just take a look at that, the bridgesformusic.org.
The signature that, I mean, made huge strides over the years. I've been seeing Bridges for doing work in South Africa for years, and it was like, I mean, it's huge now. Who's the most recent kind of featured artist? Ed Sheeran there,
and Ed Sheeran, I think, as well.
I mean, that's like, this started out as kind of a dance music led initiative, and now you have like one of the biggest pop stars in the world participating.
Yeah, and so that's you know, those things existing. You see, this goes back to that, what we were saying about the film TV industry. Things like this have existed for a lot longer, and there are a lot more of them that have been developed. You know, I seem to see a lot more women in the TV industry that work high level, and way more than I see in the music industry, and I think that's where we need to start to fall in line a little bit more, for a lot of those in a lot of those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. I think the idea of mentorship is important. Just to
definitely. I mean, how can you not, being able to teach people, help them, or at least shine a light on them and make them feel like they deserve an opportunity, the same opportunity that I had. It's like you privilege aside, it's like you still want to be able to go, no, again, it's that thing, isn't it? There's so many other factors. It's like in London, there's a similar situation. It's like if you want to come and be part of the music industry and you want to move to London, affording to move to London, again, because of gentrification, the kids that get the opportunities to come and move to London so that mum and dad can pay for them somewhere to live, then get the jobs in the industry. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's so much of it is broken. It's just like it's a complete mind.
Yeah, I mean, you really see how this systemic racism plays such a big role in this, and maybe even more so in the U.S. But here's an example of UK, and like I have heard stories of artists and Black people in the UK who feel like it's maybe a little more just like covert than overt, the racism there potentially, because here in the US we have this different issue where there was, slavery, and then civil rights took so much fighting for, and then so it's been out in the open here, racism. And it had kind of maybe gotten a little hidden for some time, but now clearly, our current president has brought it back out to the open. So it's something we know. But with the UK, where it's, also it's kind of like hand in hand with immigration, and also there's maybe some of it where it's easier to say, oh, there's no racism, it doesn't exist, right?
We have this, British people have this knack of behaving or pretending to behave in a certain way, like as they have no flies on them. And I think that's our history, and the history books have been written in a way that it's allowed us to continue to carry on and do things in a certain way that I think we've got away with. And a great example of the curtain being pulled down in those situations is essentially, what happened when they started to pull the statues down during the uprising, and those conversations I was having with my kids, especially in Bristol. I grew up in Bristol, and my uncle was an architect, and he was very obsessed with history, the Bristolian history, and he very early on, he when they found the slave tunnels underneath Bristol, they uncovered them as an architectural project. And
I don't know this story.
Tell us more about the slave tunnel. What was it?
So there's where the river comes into Bristol, because it is a port, is a very important port historically. There's a part of the dock that comes in where there's a tunnel where the boats used to come in, and they used to basically offload the slaves, and would offload the slaves through a tunnel which basically split out underneath the city, and would basically bring the slaves out in places where the buyers and sellers would then go on to take them, employ them, or move them around. And that was set up during a period. I think Edward Colston was one of the people who was a purveyor of that situation. But when they uncovered a lot of them, when they were doing archaeological digs, my uncle got to go and walk through a lot of the tunnels, and he came home and he told us a lot of the stories and things like that. But that was something I was fortunate enough to grow up learning and understanding, because I had an uncle that was incredibly well educated and very caring and thoughtful, and understood and wanted to teach me about those things, so I understood them growing up, and how important they were historically and how wrong they were. And when the statue of Edward Colston was pulled down during the BLM uprising, my kids weren't aware of the historical importance of that statue and what it stood for and why it was wrong and why it was bad. And so we had that conversation, and I told them about what I'd gone and what I'd experienced, and they were just like, but I mean, what we had, they were aware that there were slaves in this country, but didn't realize the extent of the slave trade in this country. And again, it's something that has been kind of, kids don't learn about it at school. Do you know what I mean? The kids have only really just started learning about Black history at school. It's like my kids are, so the fact that they're not learning about.
And I mean, like in the UK, like there's like colonialism, right? I mean, it's like
look at what we did. Come on. We're like the biggest racists in the world.
It's just acknowledging it, right? It's like this happened and learning about it. And then once you do that, then it leads to other things, right? So but like, until you can acknowledge that until people can acknowledge that it exists, there's problems. Like I wanted to just go back to the story of like kind of grime versus dubstep. I was talking to T. Williams about this, and at some point I really want to have him on the show, but like,
oh yeah, great.
Here's an example of like, there was two-step, like garage became this pop music, right? And it was very diverse, but this urban music kind of most of the like big successful stars were Black artists, but kind of developed into these two-step kind of split into grime and into dubstep. And grime was much more the kind of MCs, urban Black youth who are driving this movement, and dubstep was much whiter and much safer, right? So there was literally, and I believe in the UK you still have these kind of license laws where you have to say the demographic of the event that you're going to host.
Yeah, I believe that exists. Right?
Therefore, grime events, they would be saying mostly Black people, and they would not allow them to have the grime events. And granted, there was some violence around these events, but however, by including this in the descriptions, I mean, that's just going to cause discrimination, right? Because then the licensors can then say, well, Black people, we're not going to license the event for them. And therefore dubstep ended up being, this multi-trillion-dollar success story that basically created EDM and was the biggest genre, in the US.
Just wow. Sort of quantifying that is the conversations I have with Black friends in the UK, especially when it comes to going to nightclubs, is that I think, in all honesty, in the last 10, 15 years, the segregation that's happened within nightclubs inadvertently, and a lot of it's to do with things like those things that you're saying, is that basically what has happened is that groups of Black kids or Black guys will go to certain clubs because they know they can get in. They won't go to other clubs because they know that they're going to have to do something or behave in a certain way or not be together so that they can walk through the door. And so what's essentially has happened is it's just changed everything, every people's habits, the way, the idea of going to a club where it's Black and white and mixed and gay, straight, whatever, the way those things have changed kind of right in front of us without us actually even really acknowledging it.
In a way, like we allowed it to happen, right? Like in a way,
we allowed it to happen, and it's mad because that has all just been implemented along the way. Things have happened along the way that have just chipped away and caused this divide, which I just don't. It's just sad that it's been allowed to happen. I feel angry with myself. Do you know what I mean? I feel angry that I feel like I'm somehow, complicit in all of this. It's like, okay, there's no Black kids in the club tonight. Oh, it's just how it is now. That kind of thing. It's like, well, it shouldn't be how it is. Like, why is it like that?
No, I mean, we saw it to a certain degree, I think, in the US, in Boston, where we grew up, where like you really couldn't. I mean, look, there was. It's funny because it was opposite here. When dance music was so big in the 2000s, in the UK, hip hop dominated here, right? And like hip hop, therefore the clubs had to be diverse because the clubs would not be open. However, as we were trying to throw events for more like underground and more diverse music, it was impossible to find venues. There just was not an opening. It was like, if it's not going to make money easily, we're just not going to do it. And therefore, like, I think that has this access issue where people don't have the chance to even discover this music, where a diverse range of people cannot do that. And then therefore it breaks it into pockets. So we had parties like in our friend's living room, And there's not this chance of some random person walking in anymore and discovering this. You know, it's by systematically choosing money over everything else. I think this is kind of how the nightlife industry has gotten us here.
I guess I'm thinking back to those hip hop days, and you know, still there would be rules in place. No Timberland boots.
Oh yeah,
no baseball hats or something like, you know,
no tracksuit. But that was the thing, tracksuit bottoms here. You know, you don't come in wearing
tracksuit bottoms.
Yeah, that's a big thing. You know, it's like, fuck, really? Do you know what I mean? I came from like tracksuit bottoms were like, that's what you wore in a field when you were dancing. Do you know what I mean? That was like the comfort wear, like the shit that they might be a bit big for you, or they might be, you know, but that was where we danced.
Because you go to the club to dance, so you got to be
comfortable. Yeah, that was it.
That's like a subtle no raver attempt.
But it's not. But it doesn't just say no raver. It says lots of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It says more than no raver. It says no to certain kind of people, no to different walks of life. You know, no to like this is what we want in our establishment. And then you look at the lineup and you go, okay, but that lineup doesn't follow what your dress code says. Like, how does that work? Like, what is that? Like, okay, so I need to have money and dress in a certain way to be able to go and see an artist that is essentially not connecting with that audience, you know, and it's
that's the ultimate appropriation, man.
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's like the idea of decolonizing dance music, right? This is talking about a lot. And
that's exactly what we're talking about, and I think that's the thing that needs to change.
I'm curious, you know, it's like the question of how long this goes on, this COVID, how long the pandemic goes on, I feel like has a lot to do with the outcome here, right? Like a lot of people, like if you're not in this for life, if you're not going to like ride it out, if you're not going to figure out how to hustle and get by with music, then a lot of people are going to be out of the game, right? And
definitely. I mean, that's already happening.
And like, so it does open the door for new folks to come in, but they also might not have resources. So it's like it goes around in these circles.
It does. It's conflicting. I know what I would love to see the perfect outcome to be, but whether that becomes, do you wonder that people just find another way of capitalizing on some bullshit? Do you know what I mean? That's like, does it always come back to that? Like, okay, the only people left with money are tech companies or pharmaceutical companies, who then end up controlling, dictating what happens within the entertainment industry and how that gets relayed to bigger audience. You know, what kind of big events happen, what kind of, and so that's the whole thing. It's like, but then do we go back to this whole, you know, we've been having this whole like illegal party thing happening here with the kids. The kids just found a way, like, you know, you could feel like you feel about everything that you want to say about, you know, 50-year-old man sat in his chair, wagging his finger at these kids going, can't believe you're all dancing in a warehouse while all this shit, people are dying and all these things. But if I was a 20-year-old kid and I was being stuck in, I kind of feel like I would be there. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like maybe you know, it's always that Generation Z. Like, I'm a big like optimist for Generation Z. Like I want them to be the generation that are the ones that have lived through this, have come out the other side, have experienced BLM movement, have experienced all these different things, have experienced Trump being in power, not being in power, to then come out with this feistiness and desire and want to be politicians and want to change things. I'd like to think that was.
I mean, we see with climate, you know, the teenagers driving a big part of the climate movement now is really inspiring.
And my kids are really, you know, they're really conscious. You know, they really think about those things, and they're the generations that, you know, those are the kids that hopefully will come through and fly, you know, be the guiding light. That would be awesome.
And I mean, we see it like in the election here. There's the record, you know, youth turnouts in this election, under 25 turnouts, and at least with people of color, you know, really going heavily towards towards the left.
And then all the bitter old white racist people just go.
But you know what's scary? And we talked about this earlier in the show, is that 55% of white youth, only 55% voted for Biden of white youth. So it's close to 50-50 even with young people. So like we can't take it for granted, right? Like we have to keep pushing and like hope that these younger folks are continuing to learn, and also like really empower and like respect young people of color and young marginalized people and like trans people and LGBT. Like this is because they're the ones who are going to save our asses as their group grows and gets more power, and we empower them. They're the ones who are going to have the ideas and like drive this change. It's not young white kids. It's what we're seeing.
I'm with you on that.
And look, as white people, we can make a difference in our kids' lives and having them be open, and that's important, and that's our responsibility. But we can't. Everybody's doing that.
Yeah, no, totally.
I mean, I have kids.
Nah,
I don't got no kids.
No, I mean, sometimes I wish I
could inspire somebody.
Sometimes I wish I didn't have kids, but hey, especially when there's teenage boys, it's just like,
hey-o. I don't know how I'm going to make this segue from teenage boys to talking about horse meat, disco, and Honey Dijon, but I'm making that jump.
You just gotta do it. It's what it is.
I just wanted to like make sure that we get into this conversation that the super exciting work that you're doing, helping to produce a new album from Honey Dijon and a new album from Horse Meat Disco.
Isn't that their first album, right?
Yes, the first. I
just want to make sure we talk about that.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's it been like? What's the music sounding like? What's
so
exciting?
The Horse Meat album just came out, and that's
nice.
The reception. I need to you guys. There's some vinyl on its way to you.
Can't wait.
That has that. I guess we've been working on that for the last few years. That was really fun. Like working with I mean every single one of them, I love them to bits, and I think they had this music. We had this conversation a long time ago, maybe 5 years ago. Actually, do you remember that first? I don't remember what it was called. That where we started Glitterbox in Ibiza. What was it called? That kind of weird. It was the first 2 years, and then the club closed down. I'm trying to remember what it was called now. It's completely gone out of my mind. But there was a garden outside, and we were talking there, and they'd worked on all this music with Darren Morris, who's Ashley Beadle's kind of co-producer. And then they sent me a folder of the music, and it was just loads of instrumentals of like really cool stuff. And so I just kind of dug in and started putting forward ideas for top lines and involving musicians and working on stuff myself. And then it just developed over years. And then we got features, and we had Amy Douglas involved really heavily from the beginning. And then from that, it kind of just started to grow. And then we got Indira Davenport and Kathy Sledge, and it just it turned and Roy Inc. And it just became this big family of people all putting things into it. Phenomenal Hand Clap Band, and I mean there's a huge list of people. And then we ended up with the album, which I kind of finished working on with them during kind of lockdown, beginning of lockdown, and then it came out about 2-3 weeks ago. But yeah, that's been
congrats.
Yeah, that's
a long time coming.
Yeah. And it's also kind of cemented my relationship with the guy. Luke Howard is one of my closest friends. Severino I've known for 20 years or so. Jim and James I've become kind of closer with over the years, but they're just really fucking good guys. And they deserve everything that they get. The fact that they go and play the music that they play, as for queer men, gay men that are exist in a world where you throw them. You go to festivals and there'll be, I don't know, like Floor Plan and some other, like some pretty serious shit. And then you'll have like Horse Meat, like an explosion of color in the middle of everything going on.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that. I think they just so like universally loved. So having an album that kind of cements their reputation and what they are, to kind of be a part of that is actually pretty awesome. And then with Miss Dijon, that's my sister. We started, like, she had lots of ideas for this album, and we just started to kind of pull things together. But Not About You was the first single, and that was a thing that she had this hook in her head, and we just worked on that, and then it became a single. And then fast forward a year and a half, and we've got 12, 13 songs kind of really almost ready to go with something with Lily Allen, Romy from the XX, and then this girl called Hadia George, and something Rudimental, and there's lots of people involved in that. So that's been like just getting in people's heads and producing, like working as a producer, like old school idea of working as a producer, where everything is all their idea and you're just trying to help piece the puzzle together and work on all of those things, and involve the right people and move the right top lines and the right songs and all that stuff. Is that's where I'm the happiest. I feel like I don't have to be in the limelight anymore. I don't enjoy that. I don't like being on show. I don't like being in front of the camera. I never really probably have that much, but I think more so as I've got older, it's been something where I'm kind of more than happy to kind of sit back and watch other people's success. I think that's way more important for me.
And I mean, what success both these groups, Horse Meat and Honey Dijon, my goodness, like,
yeah,
I mean, this past chunk of time has been just incredible.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it's that weird thing. I think when I was young, like I was always, my ego was always like, I want to be this, I want to be this, I'm going to be the best DJ in the world. I want to play the most clubs, and I want to do the most stuff, and I want to be the most awesome, and I've got something to say about everything and all those things. I mean, I've still got something to say about most things, but the idea of being successful is the concept of it is not always the thing that you need other people to see. It's what you feel that you've achieved yourself. And there are things that happen through other people that I get reward from, and I think that's the energy from that is as rewarding. I think you have to just give up that feeling of thinking, oh, that should be me up there, that should be me, that that whole feeling. And I watch it a lot amongst peers and people, the kind of bitterness that creeps in as you get older, the lack of success, or the feeling that you deserve something that someone else has got, and feeling that you're owed something that you've never been given, and those things, it kind of creeps up on you. And I have flashes of it every now and again where I was just like, that should have been me, But now it's that feeling of going, you know what, I've got my own shit. I'm fine here,
I mean, you've made a huge mark on this industry,
I mean,
there's nothing to sneeze at.
But I mean, I hope it's a good mark, not like a skid mark, right?
I've left a skid mark on this industry.
Like a big brown stain, right?
No, speaking of skid marks, another project that you're a part of is Power Dance.
Yes.
And you did send a music video. I'd love to share. You sent a few music videos. The other one was for the Cakes to Kill It track. But are you involved in the production of that video or in the music?
So well, two things. I think Safe and Happy Power Dance, what interestingly goes back to what we talked about originally. Power Dance was born out of me not hearing any records that I liked. And I wanted to play in a club. And it was a few years ago when we were going through this weird kind of house into disco transition that was happening.
Oh, wait, sorry, Chris, it's the other one.
It's I think maybe 4 years ago now, where house music was getting a bit boring for me. I was hearing more disco that I liked. And I was trying to combine the two things together so that I had records that I wanted to play that were a mixture of both of those things, and then heavily inspired by that kind of 80s Arthur Russell sort of moment of disco that happened in New York, the kind of post-punk thing. And so that was how Power Dance came about. And that was just me putting together a lot of people. And I was DJing resident at a club called Savage Disco Metropolis, which is now doesn't exist. They closed the night, and this was one of the dancer was one of the dancers at the club, and we shot it in the venue where we used to do the party. And the idea was that it's called A Safe and Happy Place, and the idea was that we wanted to create the space where everyone felt welcome, and that was the message in this song and how we wrote it and what the idea was that behind it. And so this video was kind of born out of the idea and concept of a song or a club that existed where you didn't have to worry about anything at all, whether you were going to get in, whether you were going to be accepted, what you wore, what you looked like, and everything that we've been talking about, really.
And let's mention that the character in this video is wearing track pants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and sneakers too, and makeup and everything. So there was like the idea of doing this was for all of those reasons. Like Power Dance was born out of the fact that I felt that things were changing, and so we kind of made an album to try and celebrate that or mark it as a point in time. That was the idea. But yeah, I mean, if you want to play a little clip of it, go for it.
Yeah, let's turn it up.
Let's take a listen. I was going to wear an outfit like this to the show today, but it's a dry cleaner.
I would have paid good money to watch that.
So get together, sing a song and move around. The power dance will make you float and glide. We're dancing, 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 dancing on the floor. Outside, inside, it's a safe and happy place.
So the vocals.
Yeah, tell us.
So the vocalist on this is actually Nick Maurer, who used to be in Greenskeepers, who Greenskeepers put out records.
Oh, cool.
Back in the day, yeah. Yeah.
Eli, what was the strip club that we used to do Liz's parties at?
Oh yeah, we used to do. In East London, where was that place?
Anstey? No.
Hazy days, man. Hazy days.
Oh yeah.
I just remember. They used to do Liz Mendez used to do cubicle parties at a strip club somewhere out there in East London.
Does that ring a bell, Luke?
What's that?
No, we're just trying to figure out the strip club in East London where Liz Mendez used to do the cubicle parties. I just have this memory of me, and I don't know if you were there or not, Eli, and Chris Milo, and he started working the pole.
Yeah, that would be a Metropolis. That would be here, right?
Metropolis, yes.
Is that here?
Yeah, this is Metropolis.
Yeah.
I'm like, I remember this pole.
Yeah.
DJ 3 working it.
I actually quite a funny story. Well, it wasn't funny at the time, but when I was DJing, when you look through the booth, the pole went up to the first floor, and I watched this guy like climb up the pole while I was DJing, and literally was like a bag of potatoes, like literally just went boom and fell from the ceiling and landed like on the floor, and everyone was just like dancing around him, and people would just suddenly look down, like all these queens were just like, oh, like just carry him off the stage quick. It was actually really funny, but terrifying at the same time.
This is a
no clubbers were heard in the filming of this video. No ravers were heard in the filming of this video.
Yeah. So yeah, this was one of the songs that was the single. There was another record called Power Dance, and we self-released it, and then it ended up coming out on Classic with new mixes. And I don't know whether I'll do another Power Dance record or not. I'm working on a whole other thing at the moment, which is with my production partner, Chris Penny, who does a lot of work with me on a lot of the production. C-Pen, who's been around for a long time. Oh, yeah. And we're working on this kind of Prince tribute album as Rhythm Generation, and we've done like 8 songs, which we're we're working on at the moment. So that's being like a combined kind of Andre 3000 slash like Prince, kind of all the Critics era vibe, like those kind of drums. And
nice.
So yeah, we're trying to wrap that up at the moment, but I think that's going to be like the new thing.
Is this like original inspired stuff or cover?
Yeah. No, it's all original stuff, but we just felt we needed to have a little bit of a moment. I've still refused to believe that Prince going was actually a thing. That's like a part of my memory where I've just kind of blocked it out. It's like, okay, you just keep the spirit alive and keep, trying to like have things that authentically I could play out, because having all the Prince records and all the other shit, like it's just. And then I went through watching that whole Sign of the Times, like listening to the podcast, and it was just both of us, me and Chris, were like listening to that. We're like, oh shit, we need to just do something just to get it off our chests a little bit. So we've been working on that.
Oh, sweet! I can't.
But yeah, the other video that you put up really quickly, that was just that's Cakes to Killer, who I'm not sure if you're aware of Cakes to Killer. Cakes was on Honey's last album and basically had worked a lot. He was on that TV show that was on Netflix. I can't remember. It's not hip hop. Something like it was like some kind of like I can't remember what it was. It was like a Strictly Come Dancing or some shit like that. Like where you just trying to like get to the top of the pile, and he was kind of on that. And I think he got really kind of disillusioned with hip hop and wanted to just make some house music with proper villains. And because of the relationship with Honey, Cakes came to me and was like, I've got these records, and we're basically doing two singles. We've done this single, and then there's another single coming. But working with someone like Cakes on Classic has been pretty amazing, actually, because he just brings a whole other energy. I mean, this video, the video is amazing. He did it off his own back. If you want to just stick it on for a second.
Let's take a look. Cakes the Killer was also a featured artist on our Rave the Vote series.
Yeah, that's it. Rave the Vote.
I would never fuck you, little kid, and keep it cute. Alley cat is in a room. Trade around my way for and whip me up the stoop. Now he matching up a zoom, skinny zipping in the poop. Ooh, lifesaver, hey, what's your flavor? Got a taser that cut like a razor. Cause it keeps the death of tongue, you will savor. Moving so precise that they hands on Malaysia. Dripping any weather you hold, far from clever. It's a football vendetta, crump full of leather. Pick your rhyme schemes, they not mean I've been better. Go softer than marshmallows and goose feathers. My spot can't feel my fold up. Pop my shit from off the sofa. Or you dick riders on my body like lotions. You did it for the clout, I did it for the culture.
Yeah,
it's like some postmodern Todd Terry.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. Yeah, the whole EP. There's a track with I Call ICU with Nomi on there, and I love his energy, man. He's amazing.
Where's he from, Kicks?
He lives in Brooklyn. I'm not sure where he's from originally. He lives in Brooklyn.
Paths with him. Sadly. I said never crossed paths with him in person. Sadly.
Yeah, he's doing some. What is he doing? He's always like he's amazing. Like he's just always got stuff going on. It's one of those things where that kind of aspiration to just work and work and work and make things work and do those things. And I got a lot of time for people like that. He's now officially like part of the family. So that's kind of new. I like to call Classic Mark II, which is it's been the last sort of 10 years or so. Since Derek kind of left the company and me running it through Defected. So yeah, he's part of the kind of new family.
Hey, did you see that thing about Derek's selling all the gear on Reverb?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that was a cool feature. It's nice to go. I had no idea he would have that much like processing stuff.
Dude, that's like literally like half of his shit. Like literally. like it's insane.
So he
like,
was just Marie Kondoing some of his studio.
like literally just getting rid of things that he didn't use. Like he still has like a ridiculous studio. It was like why do you need all this shit? What are you doing with it all? I think he actually just realized like
13 broken speaking spells.
Someone broken speaking spells on Reverb.
So cool, man. I missed my chance to grab one. I was like, I'm like, whatever.
But then Derek was like the original hustler. Like I learned all my hustling from Derek. Like I remember when we met, we'd just come out like selling cassettes at Gramophone. Like that was his thing. He would turn up, I think on Thursday or Friday with like 50 cassettes, and then we'll pick his money up like 4 days later. They would all go. Like he could sell as many cassettes as he wanted. He could sell, if he could make 500 cassettes, he would have sold 500 cassettes over the weekend at Gramophone. It was I still have a lot of those cassettes as well, you know. But that was like, I can't remember what he got for them, $5, $10 cassette, and that was his like kind of hustle money, you know. And that's that thing where you start to learn from people. It's like that. This is what we do to survive. Like this is how we do it. This is the hustle. Not only am I marketing and promoting myself, but I'm also getting some money for it too. You know, it's like, you know, that's a lot to be to aspire to in those situations.
For sure, man. For sure. Well, thanks, Luke. It's been a great show. For sure.
Guys, I wish I could hug you both in person. Like I always feel like we have our annual like hugs. And I've missed that this year. I very much missed that, like being together, and you know, whether it's Croatia or you know New York or whatever, you know.
It's generally just coming together with music and dancing and
yeah, this has been really good to do. Really good.
I mean, it's been hard not to do it. That's what I mean. It's like fuck. This is like, regardless of what we say about the pandemic having good side effects, like losing this part of our lives is really.
Yeah, no, this has
really
been
tough.
very cathartic.
Yeah. Well, gonna make us appreciate it that much more when we're
when we get through
together again. That's true.
Word.
Cool.
All right,
Luke.
Thanks, Luke. We really appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Likewise. Yeah.
For sure. I love that guy.
Yeah, it's great.
That was a great show, man.
Chatting. Yeah.
That was a great show.
Looking forward to next week. We got Carl Craig. Is that right?
Craig.
We got Carl Craig. It's going to be another one. Very excited to have one of the leaders of Detroit Techno's second wave, one of my all-time favorite producers, who has recently, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, has a big installation at Dia Beacon, the art museum, not too far from where we're at. I got to go to an experience, and you know, kind of closest thing I'm going to get to a real rave right now. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Carl about that. And just, he's always been somebody that's thought a lot about aesthetics and art and how music interacts with culture. And he's a real super interesting conversation to have. So I'm excited to talk to him next week.
Yeah. Also joining us next week is Greg Paulus, the one and only from No Regular Play, and now doing his own thing. Amazing trumpet player. He's got a new release coming out soon on Free Range. Going to do a little performance, come in and talk to us. And he also has gone to see the exhibit. So hopefully you and Greg can do a little Q&A with Carl.
Yeah. Very excited. Talk about art. Dude, art. I fucking love it. It's fucking great art.
So yeah, it's been a great show. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. We'll be back next week, 4 p.m. Eastern. Oh, also,
what's your final thought, man?
I'm not done. I'm still schmoozing. Also on Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to catch up on Instagram Live with Tom Trago, one of our guests from earlier on in the program, from like one of our first episodes.
One of our first guests.
Up to, and you know, just like Luke, you know, they're both in quarantine now. We didn't even get into that at all with Luke, but you know, they're given like 15,000 pound fines for being out on the street in the UK right now.
What?
Yeah, that's craziness.
That's a quarantine. People in the US are complaining about having to wear a mask. In the UK, you get fined if you're out on the street.
Fined up.
Let's count our blessings here. Okay, you have to wear a mask. No big fucking deal. It's just a mask.
Yeah, if
Get
you
over
want
it.
to hear me and Tom Trago blab it up for a little bit, come join us on Soul Clap Official. That's the Instagram.
I also want to say that this Friday we're performing on the virtual Mikasa Holiday Festival. MikasaHoliday.com. We're doing a live stream from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. So tune into that. I'm going to be house music heaven for y'all.
Yes, man. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to move it over to our vinyl thought this week. It felt fitting to play our remix of Freaks on Music for Freaks. This is our remix of Washing Machine, and we call it the what do we call it? The Spin Cycle remix. What do we even call this thing? It was it's so fun to revisit these old tracks. Static Cling. That's right.
Static Cling
Cycle, the Static Cling remix. All right, here we go.
Man, yes.
All right, love you. See you soon.
All right, peace out.
Let me just switch this up. Woo. See you next week, y'all.
Watch my clothes go. Watch my washing machine.
Cannot take any responsibility for your shrinkage.
In the washing machine. Watch my clothes. Watch my clothes. The washing machine. Watch my clothes. The washing machine. Watch my clothes go round. washing machine. In the 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 washing machine, go round. 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 Crazy.